Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna continue with R, and we are on factors. In this exercise, they're explaining categorical variables and continuous variables. What they use as an example is a variable for a person's sex, which would be either male or female, and then they have this note that there can be others than just male or female, but it's still always a finite number of categories. So I'm assuming a continuous variable is what we're used to dealing with, like an integer can be any integer. Well, okay, we're in R. It's called numerical. So a numerical could be any numerical value. Or a character could be any string. But then I guess a Boolean would be categorical because it's only, it could either be true or false. The instructions for this exercise say assign to variable theory the value factors. To me, this looks like we're just making a character variable called theory, and we're using the assignment operator, and we're just putting factors. We'll see if that's right when we submit. I'll just run out of habit. But let's submit. So I assume the next exercise will explain this more. So to create a factor, the first thing we have to do is create a vector. A vector contains all the observations that belong to a limited number of categories. I don't know what that means, but we have here male, female, but then we repeat female, male, and then male again. So we're not limiting this vector to the different options. These are called factor levels, so you have two factor levels because there are two options for this factor. So now we use the function factor and we pass in sex vector, which is our vector here, and we're assigning this factor to this variable, factor sex vector. And now we just print that out. And we see what we get, which I assume is gonna be just male and female. Alright, I had the problem again where I was getting errors because it didn't recognize anything. I then did a class on factor sex vector. It still didn't recognize it. I retyped factor and selected it from the list. I don't think that actually changed anything, but now it works. It printed out our vector. I don't know why there's spaces in there. And then it gave us the levels. And they're saying in the console in R, you can type a question mark and the name of the function to get information about it. In this exercise, they're explaining that for categorical variables, there's nominal and there's ordinal. When I first looked at this, I was thinking ordinal would be something like numerical values, so that your factor levels would be 1, 2, and 3, because those go in order. And then nominal would be something that's a character vector, like this animal's vector is. Well, it turns out that an ordinal categorical factor can consist of character variables, or, characters, strings, so that we know it goes low, medium, high, or high, medium, low, depending on the type of order you want. So on line 2, 3, and 4, they're declaring a vector, like they've explained to us, which is our animals vector. They then convert that vector into a factor and assign it to factor animals vector, and then they print out factor animals vector. On line 7, 8, and 9, they create a vector, which is the temperature vector, which has low, medium, and high. They then turn that vector into a factor. So they do factor of temperature vector. Then they set the order equals to true because there's a specific order that we would expect. And then they do a comma and say the levels, and they create a vector that has the levels in order, low, medium, high. And that's all inside the factor function. Then on line 9, they print out the factor of the temperature vector. So for the first one, they did alphabetical order when it printed out the levels, which I assume is just a default in R. But for the temperatures, when they printed out the levels, they put low, medium, high, and then they put these greater than, less than signs in between to show the order. All right, submit. In this exercise, we're learning that we can give names to the different factor levels in a factor variable. One reason that we would want to do this because they're giving us this survey vector, and from the survey, people had to say if they're male or female, but what we get back is just an M and an F. But for survey results to be clear to people reading them, we want to assign the M to be male and the F to be female. So the way we're going to do this is combine, and we're going to type female, and male. Now, one thing that they said, if you go on what I just made line 6, and you type out factor survey vector to print it and run this, the levels are listed as M or F and then M. So in this, if I had put male first and female second, it would have assigned F to be male and M to be female, because this is the order that the factor recognizes the levels. So the order matters. Okay, I'll take this line out. Submit. Okay, we're now learning a new function which is called summary. And we run a summary on and then we run a summary on factor survey vector. So when we run this, it'll print out the summary of each. So line 2 is our survey vector, and our summary gives the length, which is 5, the class, which is character, and the mode, which is character. I don't know what the mode is. Then on line 3 and 4, we create our factor survey vector, and our summary of that tells us that there are 2 females and 3 males. And they say, are both of these equally useful? So I would say no. I guess they're useful depending on what you want to know, because if you want to know about a vector, you can find out the length and the class, and again, I don't know what the mode is. But if you just want the results of a survey, then the factor summary is more useful. Now, the instructions for this exercise say to read the code and then submit it. to test if male is greater than female. So lines 2, 3, and 4 do the same thing we've been doing. We create a vector, we turn that into a factor, and then we assign levels. Line 7 and 10 I'm confused about because if we print out factor survey vector, we've already seen that they print in alphabetical order, which means, so in factor survey vector, the first level is female and the second level is male. Now I'm guessing we're pulling an element from the factor. So element 1 is male and element 2 is female. That was confusing me, but I guess that makes sense with the square brackets. We're pulling an element. And what I was talking about at first was the levels. So let's run this. It does not understand greater than or less than with factors. Submit. How interesting. By default, R returns not applicable when you try to compare values in a factor, since the idea doesn't make sense. Next, you'll learn about ordered factors where more meaningful comparisons are possible. Oh, okay, because what I was thinking by greater than and larger was that you had 3 elements of that type and then 2 female. But they're not comparing the quantity of each. But there is a way that R can do that because when we printed out the summary of the factor, it told us how many of each. Okay, we're gonna learn more about ordered factors now. So to start with, we are pretending that we have evaluated 5 analysts on a research team for their speed. So we're creating a vector that lists the speed of each analyst. So I'm gonna just do fast, slow, fast, medium, slow. The exercise tells us which speeds to use for each, and that's all we're doing for this exercise, so I have to start over. Alright, medium, slow, slow, medium, fast. No output, and we've made plenty of vectors before. Alright, now we're gonna create a factor of speed vector. We're gonna set ordered to true, and we're going to define the order of the levels by creating a vector of slow, medium, and fast. Now, they have printed out the factor and the summary of the factor. So the factor is medium, slow, slow, medium, fast, with the levels being slow, then medium, then fast. The summary says there's 2 slows, 2 mediums, and 1 fast. Submit. Okay, now for a reason that has to do with the story they've made up, we want to compare Data Analyst 2 with Data Analyst 5. So Data Analyst 2 is factor speed vector, select element 2. And Data Analyst 5 is factor speed vector, element 5. And then we just compare DA2 greater than DA5. Run. It is false, because we know Data Analyst 5 is fast, and Data Analyst 2 is slow. Submit. Alright, so that's the end of factors. and I will be back most likely next week to go through the lesson on data frames. Thank you for watching, and thank you especially to anybody who has subscribed, liked any video, commented on any video, because you all encourage me to continue making these videos.